What is up, everybody? Chris Vlog Podcast here, episode number 83. Man, earlier today, I came across this study on Instagram. It was like Stronger by Science, something like that. And it was about walking, right? It was basically, the title is like Walk Away from the Grave. And what it looks at is a pupil's step count for the day, right? I got my Fitbit watch on here. I'm crushing a lot of steps today. It's one of the best things I found about having this thing here is you're able to track how active you are. And there's some days, like on Sunday, where we did a lot of computer work, did some scheduling for the year, I guess, at least for the next couple months. And it's like at a time when I'm usually at like 10,000 steps, I had like 3,000. And I'm like, crap. If I worked a 9 to 5 where I had to sit in an office, I now understand how people's step totals are so low. Or the kids in the classroom or the kids in college, where they're sitting around, they're sitting on their butts all day. They're getting all of these like musculoskeletal issues and they're not physically moving. They're so inactive, it's not even funny, man. Obesity rates are on the climb. You know, in the year 2000, the adult population, 30.5% was obese. 2017, this is before COVID, that number jumped to 42.4. The data's still out on this COVID thing, but all I know is right about now, overweight plus obese for the adult population is about 70%. In kids, that number's jumping. One way that we could combat that is if we get our bodies moving a little bit more. This episode, we're going to be talking about how to do that, okay? We're going to be talking about the importance of steps. We're going to be talking about the fitness program that anybody can implement, I think anyway, to our daily lives, and then a few other things sprinkled in there that I got going on. So we're going back to that step study, right? 28,000 participants were in this study. They found out that the average person took 55,100 steps to 6,500 steps, somewhere in that range, right? That was the average, okay? They also compared the statistics between that group of people with those individuals that took 16,000 steps in a day. And they found out that there's a 126% increase in all-cause mortality. All-cause mortalities like COVID to diabetes to cardiovascular disease, all of that. All of that is lumped in. That's all-cause mortality. 126% higher if you take anywhere between 5,100 and 6,500 steps when you compare that to the 16,000 step group. A lot of you people are like, hey, how am I supposed to get 16,000 steps in? You need a new job maybe, right? Your job might be putting you in the grave sooner than you want to be in the grave. Maybe your school schedule stinks. Maybe you got to get up and take some steps every so often. Maybe you just got to add a little bit here and there. Maybe you are at that 5,100 number, right? For every 1,000 steps you take beyond that point, your all-cause mortality rate decreases by 12%. All right. So even if you start at 5,100, at 5,000, we'll say, and you get up to 6,000 a day on average, your rate of mortality is going to decrease by 12%. This is according to the study. All right. Now, for every 1,000 steps you add, the longer you're going to live. Sounds pretty great. All you got to do is get up and walk, right? Now, if you are in a job or your lifestyle doesn't permit it, you need to make some alterations, right? We talked about the obesity numbers. They're rising at a crazy rate. If we could get up and get moving, you know, the stuff with COVID, man, it's like anywhere I hear rumors from 2.7 to 4 comorbidities, a part of I guess all of the deaths, right? The average number, or 2.3, whatever, anywhere between 2 and 4 comorbidities is what I see study-wise. If you could decrease those comorbidities, you know, you're going to be able to fight whatever kind of virus or infection that's coming at you just a little bit better. One way we do that is we get moving, right? So that's one part of it. Heading into this new year, you know, as I was thinking about things, I'm just coming off of COVID, right? And I felt sick for 2 days. It was worse than a cold, but not as bad as the flu, right? I had a cough that lingered. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm glad. There's some people that I know that I'm like, I don't think I want them to get this. I don't think they're going to be able to handle it, partly because their bodies, you know, they got those comorbidities I talked about. So then I started thinking about how are we going to try to reverse some of this? Comorbidities like high blood pressure, the pre-diabetic, the diabetic, whatever it may be, overweight, obese, right? We got to start to cut those numbers back, right? How are we going to do that? I outlined 3 things that I think people should be doing. If you're somebody that sits around, or if you're just anybody, right, you need first suggestion is this. Let's sprinkle in 60 minutes of walking, somehow, some way. That doesn't mean you take 60 minutes and go for a walk. That means you sprinkle it in every 10 every 2 hours you take a 10 or 15-minute walk. Next thing you know, you got 60 minutes in. Next thing you know, you look at your steps and you got an extra 1,000 to 2,000 in there. Next thing you know, your all-cause mortality is going to decrease by 12% just by taking those extra 1,000 steps, right? That's a win. You do that every day and things are going to be going good for you. When that becomes a habit, you continue to add more steps, right? That's what you do every day. 7 days a week, you try to get that number up. If you're at 5,000, try to get to 5,500 next week, right? If you're at 5,500, you try to get to 6,000 the next week. Look at what you did in the past year. Get yourself a Fitbit. Get yourself something that's going to track your steps. Literally getting up and moving could add years onto your life, and that's all we want. Not only years, not just years like, hey, I'm in a bed for my last 3 years. They're going to add life to your years. They're going to put a little bit of more juice, a little bit more pep in your step, like we like to say to our daughter when she wakes up and she's ready to go. Get walking, an extra 60 minutes, find some time. Get up a little bit earlier, take a 20-minute walk. Walk around your house while you're on the phone. Go for a walk while you're, waiting for 12 minutes, whatever. Go walk a little loop, find something. Walk around the block. You get the idea. Cardiovascular training. 5-fold increase in, I'm trying to think of the right way to word this. All-cause mortality decreased 5-fold if you improve your VO2 max, right? I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. Peter T is the doctor that went over this stuff. A 5-fold decrease in all-cause mortality with improvements in your VO2 max. How do you improve your VO2 max? There's one of 3 ways. You got the steady state conditioning, which is like, hey, I'm gonna get on the bike for 40 minutes. You just do the same pace. You get your heart rate up to like 60% of its max, and you just keep hammering away that way. You have intervals or burst intervals, whatever you want to call them, fartleks back in the day. You go hard for 4 minutes, you go easy for 3 minutes. Hard for 4, easy for 3. You keep doing that. Elevate the heart rate, let it relax. Spike the heart rate, let it relax. The third way to do it is some sort of hybrid training, which is kind of like what you see at a CrossFit gym maybe. You're doing medicine ball slams, kettlebell swings, squat and presses, box jumps, jump rope, rower, doing the rower for like a sprint, 2 minutes as hard as you can. Things of that nature, right? Kettlebells, snatches, cleans, whatever it may be. That's the hybrid type of training. A little bit of strength with a little bit of conditioning kind of mixed in. In my opinion, the kettlebell is a great tool for that. 20 to 40 minutes of those kind of workouts 2 to 4 times a week. What did I do for mine? All I'm doing is walks with weight, right? I'll put a 40-pound vest on and I'll take a walk outside. Or I'll do the Kettlebell Mile. I'll grab a 45-pound kettlebell. I'll walk 1 mile with that weight. Now, if I spend 10 to 15 minutes in the gym before I do that, then I go do the Kettlebell Mile, which takes about 18, 19 minutes. Right there, I got 30 to 40 minutes of cardiovascular training. Heart rate gets up there. It's nothing too crazy, but it's getting elevated for a period of time, right? Or if you're up here in Pennsylvania, go shovel snow for 50 minutes, man. I looked at my Fitbit. They call it zone minutes, where you're in this certain like calorie burn zone, fat burn zone, whatever it may be. And after I was done shoveling, I was at 52 on that, and I was like, wow, I don't even know if I need a workout. I hit some strength training that day, but I was surprised by that. So get out and get moving, do some labor or something, man. Lastly, strength training, right? 3 times a week is what I'm asking for. Week 1, you do 1 set. Week 2, you do 2 sets. Week 3, you do 3 sets. Week 4, you do 4 sets, right? When you do 1 set, you do 1 set of 25. When you do 2, you do 2 sets of 15. 3 sets of 8, 4 sets of 5. Then you go back to doing 1 set of 25 with an increased load. What am I doing for this stuff? I'm doing a half kneeling, 1-arm shoulder press, okay? So I'm putting my right knee on the ground. I'm in a kneeling position. Left knee's up, right knee's down. And if the right knee's down, I press with the right arm. I'm doing a squat. I chose an overhead squat because it's something I'm working out. Something as basic as a goblet squat or a bodyweight squat. If you've never worked out, bodyweight squats, 25 of those bad boys, okay? And then if you get to that point where you're doing, 3 sets of 8 and you want to add some weight, right? A hinge, a deadlift, all right? Pick a weight up off the ground, a light kettlebell. Or if you're a newcomer, grab a book or something, touch it to the ground, stand up like a sumo deadlift type of thing. Grab the book by the top of it, you hinge, touch it down, stand up. Something like that. It looks exactly like a squat, except now your feet are a little bit wider and you're sinking your hips a little bit more. Hanging from a pull-up bar, all right? Not an easy task, okay? But that's what I'm working in there. I'm hanging for 30 seconds. I'm doing a pull-up, or I'm just trying to hang for as much as I can. If you are a pretty fit individual as a male, I'm not there yet. 2-minute hang is where you want to be. Female, maybe 1.5 minutes. The best I've seen at this young, like 8-year-old in here, I think he did 3 minutes and 5 seconds just to say kind of F you to his cousin who just, did 2 minutes. He's like, screw that, I'm going to beat it. 3 minutes and 5 seconds is the best I've seen so far. Haven't really had anybody push it past that. All right, so it's a new year, right? I hope we all want to live longer and be a little bit healthier after what the last 2 years have been like. Add some walking into your day, right? You want to live longer. You want to you want to stay away from that graveyard for as long as possible. You got to get walking, all right? At least start with that, right? Get to 5,000 steps, and then from there, 6, 7, 8. Keep adding on. With every 1,000 increase you're going to decrease your all-cause mortality by 12%. Cardiovascular training, bicycle. This is like workout. This is like cardio. You go take a step aerobic class. It doesn't really matter. 20 to 40 minutes to get your heart rate going, okay? That's going to add years on your life. Lastly, strength training. Stronger you could get now, the stronger you're going to be when you're 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, all right? So let's put a focus on that, okay? Remember those obesity numbers, they're climbing high. If you have a kid, they need to be strength training too. These parameters are things that you could do as a family, okay? Moving on now. It is a new year. I'm talking about my New Year's resolution. Check out Ben Franklin's 13 necessary virtues. Basically what it does, there's 52 weeks in a year. If you divide 52 by 4, what do you get? 13. So you cycle through the 13 virtues. So you do one a week. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then in week 14, you go back to virtue number 1. Right now, I focused on 2. Temperance is week 1. Silence is week 2. For me, talking about this new year, so anyway, I'm going to work on temperance 4 times this year. And by temperance, eat not to dullness, drink not to excess, those type of things. When I eat, when I go all in, man, I go in, right? So it's never just like half a cupcake, it's 6 cupcakes. Back when I used to drink, it would be, I'm not just going to sit here and have a drink. I'm going to drink probably more than I need to, all right? Same with things like coffee or kombucha, tea, whatever. If I'm going in, I'm going in. I don't know what it is about me. But anyway, so 4 weeks out of this year, I'm going to be working on that temperance, right? The second one was silence, okay? So the second week of the year, I worked on silence. And what does that mean? Speak only, basically avoid trivial conversations, right? With this is something that I can't even do. I'm terrible at small talk. People want to talk about this and that, and oh my God, can you believe this happened? I'm just like, yeah, I guess so. I hold this conversation for like 60 seconds and then I'm out, right? I'm not good at it. I'm not good at it at all. So that was not a hard one for me. But the second part of this here, with the silence part of it, is like only speak when whatever you say, like make sure it matters. Make sure it's going to benefit somebody and not be negative, right? And I think kids need to kind of learn this. They need to follow maybe these virtues a little bit, because one thing that I hear about, like these kids coming in here, man, I guess they think I'm deaf sometimes. They're like, they just talk, man. They talk and they share all kinds of stuff, and it's all these little trivial things like, oh my God, can you believe that this person didn't like my post? Or did you see what that guy said to this person? Or I can't believe that dude, said that to my girlfriend. It's like, dude, none of this stuff matters. Get over it. Let's move on. Let's stick with the positive stuff. Social media it blows this up to even territories that people spend so much time on non-important matters and trivial matters. It blows my mind. And then these are going to be the adults in our world, right? In the next 10 to 20 years. And I'm like, are these people as adults, as grown-ups, going to be spending all their time whining about things that don't matter? Or are they going to try to be working on things that are going to make them better? So that's what my guy, Ben Franklin, great man, by the way. Those are his things, right? So I'm working on that. I'm going to keep everybody up to date on how my resolutions go as I work on the next 3 here, or the next virtue number 3, that is. Now, I talked about this book, Merchants of Doubt. Basically what it looks like here. John Maynard Keynes, an old economist, said there's no such thing as a free lunch. I hear that and I'm like, oh yeah, haha, what does that even mean? I read this book, man, and I'm like, oh, I understand now. There's a lot that's going on here. What that quote means is that there's always these unintended consequences of things. This book talked about cigarette smoke, right? nobody realized that secondhand smoke was going to give people cancer, right? That was one of those unintended consequences. People were doing this thing, doctors were like, yeah, it's fine, whatever, no big deal. Next thing you know, we're getting a run of these like cardiovascular diseases. Whoops, we didn't realize this was going to happen. They invent something like DDT, it kills all these mosquitoes. By killing all the mosquitoes, it got rid of, a lot of these mosquito-borne illnesses in some of these other countries. People are celebrating that fact, right? But what this one book, Silent Spring, outlined in the 60s, I think, maybe the 70s, was that the DDT now, not only was it killing these mosquitoes, but it was starting to work its way up the, the food chain, where whatever ate the mosquito, the little bit of a bigger thing, right? That was starting to show effects of DDT, and then whatever ate that animal was starting to show effects of DDT. And then the bird that ate that thing, and it just continued to work its way up, where eventually it's going to get into the human body. And I think that's happening in a few instances, right? There's no such thing as a free lunch, right? We start business booms. Nobody thinks about the pollution, the smoke, the smog, all that other stuff until we start having issues like acid rain and ozone damage potentially and all these other things, right? That I don't want to get into debate on whether or not these things are valid. There's a majority of people that say that this is legitimate, and that goes back to what Keene said. There's no such thing as a free lunch. But this book, Merchant of Doubt, it's a good read because it's tough to read. It's like 70 pages of like one thing on acid rain, 70 pages on the DDT dilemma, 70 pages on smoking and sick, and I'm just like, it gets deep on it. But the tricky part is that there was a certain group of scientists, right? This is the catch, and this is what made it interesting to me. There was a certain group of scientists that the book's called Merchants of Doubt. Their job, they got hired to create doubt. So these companies, the tobacco companies, hired this group to create some studies. These are scientists now, so they're going to create some studies. And they were involved in some things in previous, and maybe say the Vietnam War, right? So they were physicists, they were stuff like that. They were involved pretty high politically, so that these people were looked at as credible figures. So they create studies, they create doubt. So, all right, yeah, that person was around somebody that smoked, but what about their genetics? What about the environment? What about where they live? What about all of these other factors that are going on? You can't just say it's from cigarette smoke. So they create studies that start saying that, oh yeah, it takes multiple factors to give this. Next thing you know, the tobacco industry is 176-0. They're like Bill Goldberg, if you know pro wrestling. They're like 176-0 in these court cases, all because of these scientists were starting to create some doubt, right? And then next thing you know, there's some environmentalists that are like, wait a second, this sounds eerily familiar to what happened in the tobacco industry. And these same scientists then will get hired by, the anti-global warming delegation, and then they create some studies that create doubt. And the same group of scientists just got moved on, and they're cashing these fat checks as these companies and organizations gave them money to do it. You think about what's going on in the world now, and you're trying to understand where's the motivation behind some of this stuff. Some of this information that people are getting is just totally out of whack. And I think back to something I heard that goes back to the Nixon days, right? Follow the money, man. It always goes back to the money. These guys in these books were creating this research, creating these studies, because they were getting their wallets freaking filled with cash from these companies to do so. They didn't give a crap about what the study said. All they knew is they were getting paid to do a job, and they were going to do that job. Keep that in mind, man. When you're seeing stuff, when you're reading stuff, always remember that, man. Just follow the money. See what the heck is going on out there, because most of the time, the intention behind it is not always going to be of good quality. It's not going to be morally correct. They're just going to be out there trying to fatten their pockets, right? Anyhow, let's get back on task with what's important. Let's get moving. Step count. Let's get our step count up. If you need a strength training program, contact me. I'll get it to you right now. And get some cardiovascular training in your life. Get the old DVDs out. I don't care if it's Jane Fonda and you're doing it in your living room at 6 a.m. Get those things out and get them moving, man. Hope you guys have a wonderful year. 2022, great year. Off to a good start. Peace, everybody.